After hosting Christmas, I opened my safe and found my $15,000 emergency cash gone. My dad said, "We gave it to your sister. She's starting a family." I didn't argue. That night, I made a quiet call. The next morning, I reviewed footage, made a few copies, and by noon, my sister called me screaming, "Why would you do this?" I just said, "You should probably talk to HR before 6 p.m. I, 32M, thought this Christmas would be perfect. After moving into my new house last year, I finally had space to host the whole family. My parents, my sister and her boyfriend, my aunt and uncle, everyone gathered around my dining table for the first time in years. The laughter, the stories, the warmth of having everyone together made all the preparation worth it. 3 days later, I went to my bedroom safe to grab some documents for a meeting. The safe sat behind a false panel I'd installed myself, completely hidden from casual view. I punched in my code and opened it, expecting to see my emergency cash envelope sitting right where I'd left it. The envelope was there, but it felt wrong. Too light. I opened it and stared at empty space where $15,000 should have been. My stomach dropped. I counted and recounted the remaining bills, maybe $300 left from what had been my entire emergency fund. Money I'd saved over 2 years, kept liquid for real emergencies. Gone. My hands shook as I checked every corner of the safe. Maybe I'd moved it somewhere else and forgotten. But no, everything else was exactly where it belonged. My passport, important documents, some jewelry from my grandmother. Only the cash was missing. I sat on my bed trying to process this. Only 4 people knew about the safe, my parents and my sister. I'd shown them during the house tour, mentioned it was where I kept important things secure. Never specified what, but clearly someone had figured it out. My mind raced through the Christmas visit. Who had been upstairs? My sister had used the guest bathroom several times. My mom had helped me get extra blankets from the linen closet. My dad had admired the master bedroom renovation. Any of them could have watched me open the safe, memorize the code, come back later when I was downstairs playing host. I needed answers. I called my dad first, my voice carefully controlled. I told him about the missing money and asked if he had any idea what might have happened. The silence stretched too long before he answered. When he finally spoke, his voice carried that tone he'd used when I was a kid and had done something wrong. He told me they had taken the money and given it to my sister. She was starting a family, he said. She needed it more than I did. They'd planned to tell me after the holidays. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. They had stolen from me. My own family. $15,000 that represented months of overtime, canceled vacations, careful budgeting. Money I'd set aside for genuine emergencies, not someone else's life choices. My dad continued talking, explaining how my sister was struggling financially, how her boyfriend was between jobs, how they were trying to get pregnant and needed stability. As if any of that justified breaking into my safe and stealing my money without even asking. I let him finish his justifications without interrupting. When he was done, I told him I understood and hung up. I didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't demand the money back. I just said I understood. But understanding and accepting were 2 very different things. That night, I made a quiet call to the security company that had installed my home system. I'd upgraded to their premium package when I moved in, partly for the insurance discount, but mostly for peace of mind. The system included cameras in common areas and motion sensors throughout the house. I'd never needed to review footage before, but I had full access to 30 days of recordings. The customer service representative walked me through accessing the system remotely. Within an hour, I was scrolling through days of footage from Christmas week. I fast-forwarded through most of it, focusing on the times when people were upstairs while I was busy downstairs. There it was, clear as day on the hallway camera. My sister, creeping upstairs during dessert when everyone else was in the living room. She moved carefully, looking over her shoulder before disappearing into my bedroom. The timestamp showed she was up there for almost 8 minutes. I switched to the bedroom motion sensor logs. Sure enough, movement detected for nearly 10 minutes during that same time frame. She'd had plenty of time to watch me open the safe earlier, memorize the combination, and come back when I was distracted. My hands trembled as I saved the footage. Multiple copies, stored in different locations. I uploaded everything to cloud storage, saved it to a secure thumb drive, and emailed copies to myself at 3 different addresses. The betrayal cut deeper than the theft. This wasn't some stranger who'd broken in. This was my sister, someone I'd trusted completely, systematically robbing me while I was downstairs serving Christmas dinner to our family. She'd hug me goodbye, thank me for hosting, told me what a wonderful time she'd had, all while carrying my money in her purse. I barely slept that night, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. They thought they could steal from me and face no consequences. They thought family loyalty meant I'd just swallow this betrayal and move on. They were wrong. The next morning, I did some research. My sister worked as an office manager at a mid-sized accounting firm. I'd met her boss at a family barbecue last summer, a stern woman who took company policy very seriously. The firm handled sensitive financial information for dozens of clients. Employee trustworthiness wasn't just preferred, it was mandatory. I crafted my email carefully. Professional, factual, no emotional language. I explained that I was writing to report a serious character concern about one of their employees. I attached the security footage showing my sister breaking into my safe and stealing $15,000 in cash. I included timestamps, my dad's admission of the theft, and a clear explanation of the family relationship to avoid any appearance of vindictive motivation. I emphasized that while this was a family matter, I felt the company should be aware that one of their employees had demonstrated a willingness to steal when she perceived an opportunity. I mentioned that her position gave her access to client financial information and company assets. Before sending it, I read the email 3 times. Every word was true. Every piece of evidence was genuine. I wasn't exaggerating or editorializing. I was simply providing her employer with factual information about criminal behavior they might want to consider. I hit send at exactly 9 a.m. By 11, I'd made copies of everything and organized my documentation. Bank records showing my savings pattern, photos of the empty envelope, security footage, email confirmations, phone logs from my conversation with my dad. If this escalated, I wanted to be prepared. At noon, my phone rang. My sister's name on the caller ID. She was screaming before I even finished saying hello. Her voice was shrill with panic and rage. She demanded to know why I would do this to her. Why I would try to destroy her life over money. Why I couldn't just handle this within the family like a normal person. I let her vent for a solid minute before I spoke. When she finally paused for breath, I told her she should probably talk to HR before 6 p.m. Then I hung up. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times in the next hour. I ignored every call. Instead, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and thinking about consequences. For 2 years, I'd sacrificed to build that emergency fund. I'd worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, bought generic groceries. Also, I'd have a safety net if something went wrong. My sister knew this. She'd listened to me talk about my financial goals, had even complimented my discipline. And she'd stolen it anyway. Because she wanted something and thought she could take it from me without consequences. The afternoon stretched endlessly. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering to what was happening at my sister's office. Had they called her in immediately? Was she sitting in HR right now, trying to explain away video evidence of theft? Was she finally understanding that actions have consequences? My parents started calling around 3. First my mom, crying and begging me to call the company and take back my complaint. Then my dad, angry and demanding I stop this nonsense immediately. I didn't answer either call. They left voicemails. My mom sobbed about family loyalty and forgiveness. My dad threatened to cut me off from the family if I didn't fix this mess. Both of them acted like I was the villain in this situation, as if I'd somehow forced my sister to steal from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. When my sister stole my money, it was a family matter that should be handled quietly. But when I reported her crime to her employer, suddenly, I was the one destroying the family. At 5:30, my sister called again. This time, her voice was different. Scared. Defeated. She told me they'd fired her. Effective immediately. Security had escorted her out of the building. Her access to all systems had been revoked. Her final paycheck would be mailed after they completed their investigation. I asked her if she still had my money. She started crying and said most of it was already spent on deposits for a new apartment and baby supplies. She'd been so sure she was pregnant, so certain she needed to prepare immediately. The pregnancy test had been negative just yesterday, but the money was gone. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she asked what she was supposed to do now. How was she going to pay rent? How would she explain this to her boyfriend? How could she put this on a resume? I told her she should have thought about those consequences before breaking into my safe. Then I hung up. Update 1. The family pressure intensified over the next few days. My uncle called to lecture me about forgiveness. My aunt sent a long text about family values. My parents alternated between begging and threatening, trying every angle to make me feel guilty for my sister's consequences. But something interesting happened on day 3. My sister's boyfriend called me directly. He'd had no idea about the theft. When my sister finally told him what had happened and why she'd lost her job, he'd moved out immediately. He told me he couldn't trust someone who would steal from family, couldn't build a future with someone who made such destructive choices. He also told me something else. My sister had been stealing small amounts from his wallet for months. 20 here, 50 there. Amounts he'd noticed but dismissed as forgetfulness. Now he understood it was a pattern. I realized this wasn't an isolated incident born from desperation. This was who my sister was. Someone who took what she wanted from people who trusted her. Someone who justified theft with elaborate stories about need and fairness. The validation felt hollow. I'd been right about her character, but being right didn't bring back my money or repair my family relationships. Update 2. 2 weeks later, my sister moved back in with my parents. She'd been evicted from her apartment, unable to make rent without her job. My parents were supporting her financially while she looked for new employment, a search made difficult by her sudden termination from a position handling financial data. My mother called to tell me my sister was seeing a therapist and attending a support group for people with financial problems. She was getting help, my mother said. She was changing. Surely this was enough punishment for what amounted to a family misunderstanding. I listened to my mother's plea without commenting. When she finished, I asked if my sister had mentioned paying back the stolen money. The line went quiet. Finally, my mother said the money was gone, spent on necessities. There was no way to repay it now, especially with my sister unemployed. She asked if I could find it in my heart to forgive the debt and help my sister rebuild her life. I told my mother I'd think about it and ended the call. But I'd already thought about it extensively. The money was just money. I could rebuild my emergency fund over time. The real damage was deeper. My sister had violated my trust, my parents had enabled her theft, and my entire family had expected me to absorb this betrayal silently. They'd shown me exactly how much my boundaries meant to them, how much my financial security mattered compared to my sister's wants, how quickly they'd abandon honesty and accountability when it became inconvenient. Update 3. A month after Christmas, I received an unexpected call. The accounting firm's HR director wanted to speak with me about my complaint. They'd completed their internal investigation and had some questions about potential criminal charges. During their review of my sister's access logs, they discovered irregularities in petty cash records during her final weeks of employment. Small amounts, but a clear pattern of unauthorized withdrawals that coincided with my sister's personal financial stress. The company was considering filing criminal charges for employee theft, separate from my family situation. They wanted to know if I planned to press charges for the theft from my home, as it would strengthen their case and demonstrate a pattern of behavior. I asked for time to consider it. The HR director was understanding, but mentioned they needed a decision soon to proceed with their legal action. That evening, I sat in my bedroom looking at the safe. I'd changed the combination and hadn't told anyone the new code. The physical security was restored, but the emotional damage remained. I thought about my sister, unemployed and living with our parents, struggling to find work with a termination for cause on her record. I thought about my parents, financially strained from supporting her and emotionally exhausted from the family conflict. I thought about consequences and proportionality, about justice and mercy, about what I wanted my life to look like going forward. The next morning, I called the HR director back. I told her I wouldn't be pressing criminal charges for the home theft. Whatever they decided to do about the workplace incidents was their business, but I was done pursuing this matter. She thanked me for my time and mentioned that without my cooperation, they'd likely handle the workplace theft internally rather than involving law enforcement. I never learned what final decision they made about my sister's case. Final update. My emergency fund is slowly rebuilding. I work extra hours when available and maintain the same careful budgeting that built it the first time. The money will return eventually. My family relationships have permanently changed. My parents and I speak occasionally, brief and polite conversations that avoid mentioning Christmas or my sister. The easy warmth is gone, replaced by careful distance. My sister and I haven't spoken since that final phone call. I've heard updates through family members. She found part-time work at a retail store, moved into a smaller apartment, ended her relationship with therapy after a few sessions. She's surviving, adapting, moving forward. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. If family should forgive family regardless of the betrayal. If I should have found a way to handle this privately, preserving relationships over principles. But then I remember the feeling of opening that safe and finding my money gone. The casual way my father explained their theft as if my consent was irrelevant. The months of sacrifice that had built that fund, dismissed as less important than my sister's immediate wants. I think about boundaries and consequences. About the difference between a mistake and a choice. About what happens when people learn they can take from you without paying any price. My sister made her choice when she broke into my safe. My parents made theirs when they enabled her theft. I made mine when I refused to pretend it didn't matter. The Christmas dinner feels like a lifetime ago. The warmth, the laughter, the sense of family unity. All of it built on a foundation I hadn't realized was already cracking. Maybe the theft didn't break my family. Maybe it just revealed what had already been broken. I don't regret my actions. The evidence was clear, the consequences were proportionate, and the boundaries I established were necessary. My sister learned that theft has consequences. My parents learned that I won't absorb their poor choices silently. And I learned that sometimes protecting yourself requires disappointing people who think you should sacrifice everything for their comfort. The safe sits in my bedroom, secure behind its hidden panel. But the real security comes from knowing I'll defend what's mine, even when the people who should support me choose not to. Some lessons are expensive. Some cost more than money.